Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just chill. Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Live life. Live fully.
Good to have you on the show. This is Omobola Stephen, the host of Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Now, we love to explore topics on the personal development and self-improvement from experts and professionals who are adept in these topics. Now, they come to the show to share transformative insights that is going to pivot the positive changes you and I need. And it's very important, and also we emphasize the importance of we embracing personal development and self-improvement. Now, all of the changes that we actually desire life to offer us can only happen when we are also ready to make that changes and also to embrace the changes that life brings along our way. And now, when we look inwards, we get to realize that there's so much bounties and possibilities that lies within us that is waiting to our next and be maximized when we don't give up on personally developing ourselves. Now, this is the crux of the matter and the importance of this topic of discussion and the reason why Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen has come to stay, and also sharing disruptive and constructive mindship conversations that is going to move you from where you are to where you need to be. Thank you, Moira Mills, for joining me on the show today. We're going to be talking about the education detox, why deschooling the parents matters more than curriculum. And now Moira Mills is the founder of Soul Path Brandin. She's a life schooling on life schooling. She's a lifelong unschooler and also a roadschooling mom. Great to have you on the show, and looking forward as we had a great time in this important topic.
It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Absolutely. Looking forward to a great time. Moira, we understand that we're in a dynamic time, and this is such a crucial topic for discussion, especially for the children and also the parent, especially the mom. We know the importance of the role of the mother in terms of deschooling, unschooling, and also, leading the child towards the future that is important for him or her. So let's begin with your lived experience. What was it like to grow up unschooled on a homestead in Alaska?
So, you know what? It's interesting because when you grow up that way, it just seems so normal at the time. And it wasn't until adulthood that I realized how unique it really was. I was able to, in so many ways, we had a lot of responsibility. There was a lot of work to be done, but I had a lot of freedom to be able to explore the things that interested me. And I could even watch the kids around me who were going to school, be exhausted when they got home from a day of school. And I had been, exploring and doing all sorts of things all day. So it just seemed it just seemed very normal to me.
But really, what does this seem normal? Can you tell me a bit about your background? Does your parents have this kind of experience of homeschooling or deschooling?
So I grew up in a very small, very rural town, and there wasn't a kindergarten in the area. So my older sister was in public school. She would have been like second or third grade, and my mom wanted to explore some kindergarten type curriculum with me. So we started with that. And at the time, unschooling didn't really have a name. The term was coined in the late 70s, but this was happening in the mid 80s. And it wasn't, we didn't have the internet. So there wasn't all this talk about what the idea was. So she just started exploring with me. I remember being outside and looking at bugs and, finding wildflowers and things like that. And then it just slowly evolved. I don't think that it was an idea necessarily that she had at the very beginning. It just kind of evolved into that with my sister being in kind of those early years. And then after doing it for a year, my sister was very upset that I got to stay home and she had to go to school. So then she came into the home as well, and we were doing it together. We were a few years apart, but yeah.
Really, Moira, can you tell me a bit about your experience? We like to learn more about that.
Yes. Okay. So I loved animals. That was my thing. I didn't really there weren't a lot of kids that I grew up around. There were a few, but it was very rural, and I really loved animals. So at a pretty young age, the deal was I could have any animal that I wanted, but there were two requirements. It had to produce something. It wouldn't just be a pet. Like even if it was a dog, it would be there to like help guard the property or something like that. There was some kind of a role that it had. We weren't just going to be paying for pets that just sat around consuming. So that was rule number one. And rule number two was that I needed to figure out how to pay for it. So I was also like, I would have loved to have gotten a horse, but that in Alaska is not reasonable because a horse, there's not a whole lot of jobs for a horse to do. And you have to feed them hay basically 11 months out of the year. So that was not reasonable. So I had to get really creative with what can produce something and how can I pay for it. So I started with rabbits. And then I got this great idea that if I raised wool sheep, it was the perfect like mix of both worlds because they would produce something, but it wasn't for meat because typically like the first obvious thing on a farm is they're producing meat. And I didn't want that to be the only thing that we were doing. So I fell in love with wool sheep. So that was kind of one of my big things that started when I was about 11. And so I had to figure out how to make money to buy them, where to get them from. So I babysat like a ton, made as much money as I could. We researched breeds, what would be a good breed to have in Alaska. Alaska is very remote, so it's very limited on stock. So I had to do a lot of research about where to find sheep that would be good quality and good for our local ecosystem. And then I basically had to order them from what we call the lower 48. So the rest of the US, I had to order them from, I think it was Washington or Oregon. So I had to pay for all of that. I had to pay for the vet bills. I had to pay for the plane flight up to Alaska. You have to research how to give them a nutritious diet. We didn't buy pre-formulated food, so you have to research and figure out what they require. So all the little elements that you would learn in specific subjects in school, I got to learn it within this one subject or this one experience of raising animals.
All right, good to know. Really, Moira, how can we better understand what unschooling and deschooling is? Can you share your insight?
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll start with unschooling. Unschooling is like what I described. It's a process of what's the interest. If you have 10 kids in front of you, they're going to have different things that light them up. For me, it was really animals. That motivated me more than any other thing. For another kid, it could be sports, it could be dance, it could be designing a robot. It's kind of endless possibilities. So what unschooling is at its core is who is this child and what lights them up, what inspires them to want to learn, not dictating you have to learn these subjects, X, Y, and Z, but saying, well, what interests you? And then you ultimately find all the subjects within that. So you'll find reading, writing, arithmetic, history, you'll find everything within that subject, but it's coming from a place of interest, not a place of, I need to take a test on this thing and I need to get an A on this test. And then I need to get A's on all of my tests so that then I can take a bigger test and get another A on that test to then, progress down the line. It's starting from a place of interest. And then deschooling is the process of detoxing what we have assumptions about what education is. When you think of a child starting school, there's all of these ideas about what that means. And so it can be really hard to question those ideas without recognizing that those are all assumptions about what an education even is. So it's an amount of time where you step back from the expectations and it's to help you recognize how much learning is happening all around you and not just fixating on the textbook and the test part of it. So when you're driving down the road and you're recognizing street signs, that can be reading, or you are looking at speed limits and how speed limits change depending on where you're driving. All of those are the seeds that learning comes from. So deschooling is a process of really detoxing what we think education is supposed to look like so that we can see more broadly what it can look like. Does that make sense?
I'm sure you can go ahead with schooling.
So the unschooling, it's really a detox. So say we've got a family and their kids are in, say, a typical kind of school model. You would want to step away from that. And the first question that tends to come up for people is, what curriculum do I get? So they get very busy in picking what the best curriculum is. And the curriculum is always going to be some version of a stack of books or worksheets to do. And it's all broken down in terms of reading, say reading, writing, and arithmetic. So what deschooling is let's pause the current system. Let's take a break from thinking in those terms. And we're going to take a pause and experience life and see what direction we're drawn to. As an adult, when we're fascinated with something, we can go research it, right? Like if something sparks my interest, I go online, I do some research, and I start educating myself. Those same principles apply for children. And as a parent, our role is to help expose them to lots of things so that they can see what sparks their interest. And then it's really just waking up in the morning and seeing what fascinates us today. What do we want to learn about? Now, I will say, as a caveat to this, it's based on a belief that we are designed at our very core to want to learn things. Right? And I deeply believe that all of us, it may have been suppressed out, but all of us have at a very core level a want and a desire to learn things. So with unschooling, when we wake up in the morning, it's okay, there's a project maybe that we're already working on, but how can we learn something new today by furthering a project that we're already excited to work on? Now, that's not to say that there won't be times that we run into challenges and things get hard. And I'm not saying we don't necessarily drop the thing when it gets hard, but when we have this want to achieve something, then those hard moments become much easier to work with. And we don't let them stop us because we just run into a bit of a limitation or a challenge.
All right, Moira, what do most parents get wrong when they try to do school differently?
Where do they get? One thing is that when we don't detox our own thinking of education, we try to recreate the only system we know, which is one version. But we're trying to recreate something that already isn't working for our kids because we're not detoxing. I would say that that's the number one challenge that we need to talk about in the education space more.
So how can we begin to do that, Mara? We know this is very challenging, and introducing this system can be very, very daunting. Are you suggesting that these three approaches is something that parents need to begin to consider, or the educational system, or what we're talking about here? Now we're not even talking about the schooling. Are we leaving that out?
Well, to begin with, we need to take a break. So the education piece will come and the learning will come, but we have to take a break from what we think it's supposed to look like. Just like any detox, we have to detox like a sugar detox. We have to stop consuming the sugar so our body can have a break from needing to deal with the sugar to then have an experience different. So I like the example of chocolate. I didn't like dark chocolate, like very dark chocolate, for a long time. And then I did a sugar detox and I really cut out all sugars. And it wasn't until months later that I had a piece of dark chocolate and I finally was able to taste the flavors in the dark chocolate in a way I couldn't when my body was overloaded with the sugar from the typical milk chocolate. So we can't see the possibilities when our system has a baseline of what it thinks is normal. So we can't think about what to do until we stop doing what we expect we have to do.
And now, when we need to unschool, What do you think is the role of parents in this scenario?
We are our children's best teacher, and we can tell them all day what to do, but they're really looking at us as the example. So I believe, and when it seems to be the most successful when I work with people, is when the adults remember what fascinates them. Like, it's really hard to be on this hamster wheel of paying bills, like making sure the mortgage is paid and making sure that the car is in great shape and we're going on vacations and all of those things. But what really drives and inspires us, that's what our children are paying attention to. Like, I was just having this conversation with somebody about learning money responsibility, right? Now, there's curriculums, all sorts of curriculums out there to teach children about how to be with money and how to use money. But how their parents are with money is the real education. We can think in theory all day. So, our role as parents is to deschool ourselves and to recognize where we have maybe some societal shoulds pushing us to do things that we really are not here to be doing, and to make that shift ourselves. Because that I think is probably the best gift that we can give our children, because they're going to observe that. And that's passively working with them in every moment of every day. Do as I say, not as I do, becomes a little problematic when we're not living our own interests. And so many of us as adults, we've forgotten the things that really light us up and how we want to be spending our time and what value we want to be bringing into the world. And the more we can do that, it's going to help support our children.
Thank you so much, Myra. But really, Deschooling the parents in this modern society really is a tough nut to crack. I know that you can agree with me on that. Okay, so let's move ahead. So, how did becoming a mother shift the way you thought about education and freedom?
So I had a lot of assumptions myself about what education was like because of my childhood. And it really was getting pregnant with my son in 2014, and really looking at where childhood is and education is now, for me to say, I can sit back and, not be happy with the direction things are going, but I have a responsibility in doing what I can to bring my truth forward. I have a very unique experience. There are definitely other adult unschoolers out there, but not a ton of us. And I feel it my responsibility to say this path isn't for everyone, but this is a possibility for people that it resonates with. And I can share my truth, and I want to create this kind of a world for my son. I'm not just going to put him on that conveyor belt into that system, but I would also like some other families to relate to, and to have as friends on this journey. So here I am.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're having a great time road schooling because you're a road schooling mom. So really, in terms of your brand, the Soul Path Brandin, why are you interested in clients who just wake up suddenly to the realization that school, career, and life as usual doesn't just work anymore?
So it's very exciting from it. Like, I can sit here and I can have a problem with what's happening. And then I run across this tool, which for me was sidereal human design, of saying there's a lot that's hard to explain, but in finding this way of seeing each person individually, like, we can hear that people are unique and people are individuals and everyone's different, and that's beautiful. But how do we really quantify that in a way that we can use in our day-to-day life? And so for me, it's been very exciting I think this is the best tool that I have found, to say, oh, I can understand this person that is very different from me. And I can help parents understand their partners or their children that are all much of the time very different from them, in a way that brings compassion and understanding, where we can really enjoy the people that are around us and respect and enjoy and embrace the differences instead of trying to change them or getting frustrated because they're doing stuff that's in ways that we don't understand because it's not the way that I work.
All right. So can you share tips that can help our parents set a foundation for deschooling success?
Yes, I would say the first piece is I feel like it's one of those you really have to have the faith and the trust to jump into it and really fully do it. I think it's much more challenging when you try to maintain a schedule and also detox. It's kind of like let me have my sugar in the morning, but I'm not going to have it at night. It's really, I think the most important part is to really jump in and trust the process that we are all designed beautifully. We are here for a purpose. And that there's a reason that we are here. Each of us is here, and we may not understand our children. We may not understand our partner, but to trust that and being willing to jump in and try even if we don't understand or it doesn't necessarily make sense to us at the onset.
All right, Mara, any exciting news or any important information you think it's going to add value to the audience? You can share if you have any.
Well, I do have. It's a free, very quick reading. It's called 5 Minute Soul Read, and it's really you just plug in your information, and I send off a couple-minute recording of this is kind of the basics of who you are, and it really is the foundational pieces are how do we make decisions? How do we attract the people and situations that we are here to experience into our lives? How do we understand the people that are different from us? So that's a free thing. And I love doing it with families. I was actually just doing it with a father-son a few minutes ago. And that I would say I think it's the best tool that we have out there.
Absolutely. Good to know. Thanks for sharing that, Amara. And we sincerely wish you best of luck in this project. And
Thank
the
you very
subsequent
much.
one, I'd like to share social media handles on your website so we can connect and learn more about you and what you've been up to as regarding your branding, Soul Path Brandin, and all about unschooling, deschooling, and also homeschooling.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
Yeah, sure. We're looking forward to your social media handles on your website. Do share.
So my website is moiramills.com, Moira Mills, MILLS.com. The 5 Minute Soul Read is 5minutesoulread.com. And I am on Telegram at Moira's Deschool, and I am on Substack at Substack.Moira Mills. Those are the main places that I am.
All right. Good to know that we're going to share that on the show notes. Absolutely very important. Thank you so much, Moira Mills. You're the founder of Soul Path Brandin and also an unschooler and a road schooling mom. We have a great time talking about the education detox, why the schooling the parents matters more than curriculum. And that was a great time we had together explain on this topic. I know it's a really, really broad topic of discussion. Some other time, I think we're hoping we can do justice to this topic once again. Thank you for sharing your time and also your expertise to this important topic. Wish you best of luck once again, Moira.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now, if you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the podcast, you can do so on any podcast distribution platforms or any podcast promotion platforms you bump into online. Just search for Larry Olich by Omobola Stephen, where mind shift conversations happen. We share profound insight on topics on the personal developments and self-improvement from expert and professionals who are hardened in these topics, where we pivot the transformation you need in order for us to move from where you are to where you need to be. You can connect with me, Omobola Stephen, and also Mindship Conversations on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube. And also you can check me online on www.mindshipconversations and get to know more about me and what I've been up to lately. Till I come your way, I need you to stay safe. Talk to you soon. Thank you once again, Moira. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.